Hi everyone, Playmaker here. Boy, have I got a theory for you guys. So, as many of you may or may not know, on my channel, I specialize with the idea brought on by Rascal Entertainments of Marco Diaz from Star vs. the Forces of Evil becoming Spider-Man, or Spider-Man with a top hat, whatever you want to call him. And the entire idea is that this is this universe's version of Spider-Man, Marco is. Now, of course, this is just a whole fan-casted rehash of this character, but my theory is, what if this isn't as far-fetched as we thought it would be? What if this isn't just as simply as just recasting one character as another? My theory is, what if Marco is in fact one of the many versions of Spider-Man out there? I know it sounds weird, but let's just toy with this idea first. So, as you know, with the entire idea of the Spider-Verse is that there are multiple realities where Peter Parker or even another Spider-Man or another Spider-Woman or a Spider-Person or an animal has become Spider-Man. Now, of course, there are many realizations of this idea. Like there's a Spider-Man who is from the future and Hispanic. There's a Spider-Man who's a pig. There's a Spider-Man who is Peter Parker's daughter. There's a Spider-Man who's a girl from Japan in the 23rd century. There's even a Spider-Man who's dressed as the Fantastic Four, as the Fantastic Four with a bag on his head. Now, if that isn't weird, I don't know what is. But the entire idea that Marco Diaz is Spider-Man couldn't be far-fetched because of mainly the story of Starverse's entirety. Now, I know the story is about Star in general, but I mean, Spider-Gwen, the version where Gwen Stacy becomes Spider-Man was about her and not Peter Parker, so it couldn't be that far out there. So, now, first, let's get into the main first topic of it. Now, this is the main template, this is the main base for what people base Peter Parker to look like. Like an average teenager with brown hair, average build, sort of scrawny, sometimes a Poindexter, a little good looking, and so on. And, of course, that's the live action one. And of course we have the animated versions of them, whether they're from the 90s, early 2000s, mid 2000s, or even that goodness awful 2017 version. And all of them are pretty much have the same exact basis. I mean, and especially when you're considering the spectacular version of Peter Parker, they do really all look like Marco Diaz. Marco himself looks a lot like a version of Peter Parker, or like any kind of version of Peter Parker. Like, he just looks like that. And of course, like, the average look of Peter Parker, and for Marco for that matter, is pretty average when you think about it. But when you get into the whole story of it, it may not be that far-fetched. One key factor being this. Monster Arm. Now, as those of you who don't know the show, in one episode of the Starverse show, Marco was obsessed with training for this karate tournament that he was being a part of between him and his rival Jeremy Birnbaum. And upon training, he broke his arm. So he asked Star to fix his arm. And of course, being the untrained magic girl that she is, she botched it up pretty bad and turned Marco into this. Or his arm into this. Yeah. But then, as the episode got on, Marco realized that this arm was no curse, but a sort of blessing, as it made him stronger and more agile to people he was fighting. Now, of course, this was an accident for him, but he realized that this arm was a lot more agile. It made him a lot more stronger. It made him a lot more prone to fighting than he normally was. And he saw that as a great gift. So, as time went on, and Marco slowly developed this arm, he realized he could use this arm to his advantage. He could train with it. He could become stronger, become a better version of himself than he once was. But as he got on, it made him bitter, aggressive, angsty. It made him think that no one else around him he could trust. And above all, it made him a complete jerk to his friends. And it was upon realizing that we realized the truth about Monster Arm. It wasn't just some tentacle that Star just magically appeared on his arm. It was a person within itself, a parasite, a mind-controlling force that was trying to use Marco to fulfill its own ideas. And in the end of the show, toward the end of the show, the entire aspect of Monster Arm, to fight his rival Jeremy and to win, but upon realizing that the Monster Arm was going to use something more extreme, was going to eat him and kill him, Marco realized that this guy is too much, this guy is too strong, this is what I wanted. But then realizing that, the monster arm realized that Marco was going to try to stop him. Was weaker than he thought. So he decided to beat him up and almost kill him and try to make him submissive to him. Now, I don't know about that. I don't know about this, folks, but I'd say that's pretty similar to a certain brown-haired guy who had a goopy monster on his body that was making him control things and making him do all sorts of bad stuff. Wouldn't you say? Now, let's just do the comparing there. Just like Peter Parker, when Marco got the monster arm, it made him stronger, it made him more agile, it enhanced all of his abilities, just like the symbiote did. And just like Peter, when he was at his peak, he started pushing everybody away, just like Marco was. And he was even pushing his own, well, I mean, of course, friend at the time, but girlfriend away from him, thinking that he needed no one. And even after having all these thoughts and stuff come into his head, Peter still listened to the arm, listened to the symbiote, realizing that it was trying to help him and get his desires, just like the monster arm was. And just like them both, at the end, when Marco realized that it was going too far and it was trying to do something more destructive than it wanted to, it decided to control him and make it more hostile, just like the symbiote did. And not to mention the overall fact that Jeremy Birnbaum and Eddie Brock are pretty much the same aspects of each other. I mean, of course, Eddie's not rich and he's more, honestly, a little less annoying than Jeremy, but the fact that these characters are so much alike with our main character makes them pretty much the alternate versions of themselves. I mean, like the entirety of Eddie Brock is that he's his rival in the Daily Bugle with Peter Parker, and the entirety of Jeremy Birnbaum's character is that he's the rival to Marco Diaz, and he's only trying to make him look bad, just like, yeah, really similar, huh? But yeah, that's the biggest connection that I have with this entire theory. Now, another one is like, it's a little small, but it could still be a possibility. I mean, the soundtrack between Spectacular Spider-Man and at the end of the show with the giant spider that webbed a tree. Now, I know that's a bit of a stretch, like with just similar sound effects. I mean, cartoons and movies use similar sound effects all the time, which makes them not connected. But I mean, it's a little in there. But also, here's another big theory that many people overlooked that I happen to look at. Now, as many of you will recall, Marco's little sister, Mariposa, was about to be called Marco Jr. by her parents because for some reason, like, they thought she was going to be a boy at first because of some mistake. And for some reason, they were going to name her Marco Jr., which doesn't make sense. You don't name a kid after a brother. You name him after a parent when you call him Jr. So, upon realizing that, the family realized that she was going to be called Mariposa instead of Marco Jr. But here's a bigger thought. What if she was going to keep Marco Jr. as a nickname? That way, she could keep it as a nickname and use it in abbreviations for MJ. How's that there, huh? Now, of course, I mean, I know some of you might think that her being a version of MJ is a little weird because she's Marco's sister, but I mean, not every universe does Peter Parker get with MJ, or is MJ who you think? I mean, just look at Zendaya's MJ. She wasn't Mary Jane, she was Michelle Jones. And the fact that, again, like with Spider-Gwen, her being Spider-Man instead of Peter Parker, it was a stretch, but it would still happen. I mean, who's to say that MJ couldn't be Peter Parker's sister in another universe? Now, this is all up to your interpretation of however you want to see it, however you want to see my own version of things, or however you want to see the shows in general. But this could very well be a version of the Spider-Verse that was just so far out there. I mean, Doctor Strange said there was an infinite possibility of Spider-Man out there. Who's to say Marco Diaz wasn't one of them? Alright, just let you guys chew on that for a minute, and Playmaker, signing off.